From Relay FM, this is Connected, episode number 80. Today's show is brought to you by Braintree and Peacock. My name is Myke Hurley, and I am joined by Mr. Federico Vitici. Good morning, Federico.
Good morning, Mr. Myke Hurley.
And good evening, Mr. Stephen Hackett.
I think you have that backwards.
Damn it.
Yeah, kind of. I think it's morning for Steven and evening for me, Mike, but, time zones. What are you going to do?
Well, I'm just treating you. People could be listening at any time,
You're right, yeah.
So I was trying to give the illusion of there being no fixed time.
Yeah, want to give me a good night, Mike?
I mean, if you're paying.
Okay, let's move to follow-up.
Stephen, what is an 80th anniversary? What do we give for an 80th?
Oh, we have to look it up. Guess we never do this in advance.
Nope.
80th anniversary. And
My bet is on some type of, I don't know.
I'm going to say Ruby or something.
Ruby? No, I'm going to say Sapphire
okay.
because of Pokemon.
I'm trying to find the site we always use for this. Here we go.
There's a site we always go to?
It's usually pretty high in the results, but this
Really?
is on ask.com, so it's probably right.
Yep.
Traditionally, oak, the wood, is used in place of gems or precious metals because the oak tree takes a long period of time to commitment to reach full maturity.
Like Professor Oak.
Yes.
I was thinking that.
Yes, but in no way is that the same thing. So congratulations, guys. I got you this oak tree.
Hooray!
Thank you, guys.
Anyways, we should talk about our follow-up. We've been speaking now for several weeks about iOS app release notes. And the follow-up last week brought up this idea that, big companies, some reasons big companies may use what we will call vague release notes. And several people wrote in. I'm going to give Matthew the credit because I think he put it the most clearly in his email, saying that companies like Twitter and Facebook use feature flags to enable new functionality in a rollout. So we see this in the Twitter client pretty often where they'll enable like video upload or something to a small subset of users, and they're not doing it through a new app release, but what they do is they have that functionality built in, they release it to the app, and then through feature flags, they basically turn it on as they wish. And they also use, Twitter especially uses a lot of A/B testing in their app, which I think is I think they're toning it back now a little bit. I think it was pretty out of control for a while there. So in this particular instance, it would be misleading, right, to say, oh, this update includes video uploads. Well, if you're only rolling that out to a subset of users at a time, you can't put it in your release notes, right? People are going to be leaving you bad reviews. They're going to be contacting you on support saying, hey, I don't have this thing that you promised me in the release notes. So I can see this. I can see this being a reason to be a little vague in your release notes. Now, I like I said, particularly think Twitter especially has been guilty of overdoing this sort of thing in the past, but I think that's a relatively reasonable reason to have vague release notes. Federico, I was particularly interested in what you thought about this.
I'm always annoyed when I see these companies saying that they do staged rollouts of new features. I understand why. Like when you're a company like Facebook and you have, I don't know how many billions of users, probably 1 billion. I can understand the problems with rolling out a feature to, a billion people at once. It's just very poorly communicated on the App Store. Like there's a contrast between going to the App Store and seeing every week, we make the app better for everyone, and then you go on The Verge and you see Facebook is launching reactions. And you're like, okay, so it must be on the update that I just downloaded, but it's not. So it's a little confusing. And I mean, I understand why they do this. I just wish you just write your release notes better. At least inform people, in couple of weeks you're going to see this. I mean, I don't have to go on The Verge to read about this stuff early. I don't know. Maybe people don't care. Maybe people don't care at all. I don't know.
I mean, that's the flip side of all this, right? That this sort of misleading of A/B testing and everything. That maybe it wouldn't be a big deal because people don't read release notes, and especially now. When did it start? Did it start with iOS 8, the automatic app update? I think there's a lot of times where people don't even know their app got updated, right? So the whole conversation can be sort of underpinned with the idea that maybe fewer and fewer people actually see these things. But it's still, I thought it was an interesting point brought up by Matthew. Up next in the follow-up, Thomas asked me if I had tried the Pebble time round. Thomas's argument is that it looks like a normal watch at a glance, which is something that I like about the Withings watch that I'm wearing, and that it's fast and focused, which is a subtle, sick Apple Watch burn. And I have not looked at the Pebble time round. I backed Pebble, like their original Kickstarter back in 2012 or something, and it was fine. Like the original Pebble, I think, was ahead of its time. I particularly don't like the look of the Pebble time round, and the Pebble has the same core problem I have with the Apple Watch, is that glanceable information just isn't that important to me in my life anymore, and really what I like, something that looks nice in my estimation, and I like the step counting. So I think the Pebble time round is an interesting product. I think Pebble probably long term has some issues, but I think it is worth mentioning as an alternative if the Apple Watch specifically isn't for you, but you do want say some notifications or a couple other things coming to your wrist.
I don't like the look of that one. The bezel's huge, it's huge, and it's really obvious in its hugeness.
Yeah,
I'm not a big fan of that one, in all honesty.
It doesn't look good.
Yeah,
no,
it's not their best looking product.
No.
So we're going to talk a little bit about Siri later on in the show, but I did want to touch base on the Amazon Echo. Spoke about last time. We've added one to our household, and it's really taken off. I gauge how my family members use things as sort of like most nerds do this, right? We experiment on our loved ones who are normals, and so far the Echo has made a pretty good dent. I will say that our kids have heard us talking to it and now tried to make it do funny things, or try to talk to it, and of course most of the time they're just talking silliness, so it just kind of blinks at them. But I find it sort of adorable that my kids try to make Alexa do things. And Federico, you've put Alexa to work with time zones, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people corrected me on Twitter because people love to correct you. So I was just working and I needed to do a quick time zone conversion. And I'm sorry, guy who said on Twitter that I should have done the calculation in my head, but apparently I'm stupid. I just, I wanted a computer to help me. So I was like, I should just ask Alexa. And I was like, Alexa, what's I think 5 p.m. San Francisco, 5 p.m. Pacific time in Rome, Italy. And in 1 second, Alexa replied, it's like 2 a.m. in Rome or something. And that was great because I didn't think about formatting my question in any specific way. And just out of curiosity, I asked Siri the same question, and initially didn't understand. Then later, it did understand the question. I still don't know whether it's been fixed in those couple of hours, or maybe if it's just the way that it interprets the verb. I don't know. Anyway, I think if you say what's, you get an error. If you say what is, it works.
All right. Oh gosh.
But apparently it always works if you say convert.
Okay, let's try it, shall we?
Okay, try it.
What is 7 p.m. Pacific time in Rome? Okay, so it's taken that in. Check
my sources.
Oh, there we go.
Checking my sources.
I found this.
All right, so the result is 4 a.m. CET.
See, the amount of time that it takes to check his sources and to show you the response on screen, Alexa in 1 second spoke the answer back to me.
Here's my issue with this, is it's using Wolfram Alpha. This is a relatively simple question. Siri should be giving me that answer
immediately
in voice.
Yeah.
That's, in my opinion, what it should be doing.
Agreed.
Rather than showing me it on screen. Let's try it the other way. What's 7 p.m. Pacific time in Rome?
It's Tuesday, the 1st of March.
Yeah.
2016.
Yeah, it's Tuesday.
I don't understand how... Because do you know what it heard that time? Same question. What is 7 p.m.? Which is what I asked the first time. But because I said what's, it tells me the date.
Yeah.
I don't even understand how that question could give the answer of the date.
I have no idea, Mike.
I've had this issue with Siri in regards to time zone conversion a bunch of times because I do it quite a lot. And I really just fail to understand how that isn't an answer, like an answer that Apple are coding in, and making part of the UI like they do some other things, rather than making it beatbox for me. That's fantastic, but why didn't you actually give me the functionality that I'm looking for?
And it's not like they've got to go build it, right? I mean, they have. It's one of the things that's really frustrating to me about all of this is that the phone iOS does this in the clock app. Like it's not like they have to go build some system to like calculate time. They already have it. Like why not tap into what's already part of iOS?
They have a world clock. It's there.
Yes.
They even stole the design from somebody. Like just go use it. It's not hard. Anyways, Mike, you bought a phone.
Yeah, see, whilst all you guys are going out and buying Echoes, I march the beat of my own drum. And I buy what I want to buy because I don't join the Amazon cult like you suckers.
No one is forcing you. Why are you making these a
You
debate?
guys, I would ask people to to go and listen to last week's episode. I'm sure at some point you both were trying to convince me to get an Echo.
So you don't want this one I bought you as a gift?
Wow, Mike.
Oh.
You have a
Hurts.
dear friend buying you Amazon speakers and you refuse to accept the gift. Wow, well done. Anyway, you bought an
Did
Android
you really
phone.
buy me one, or are you just trying to make me feel bad?
I'm just trolling you.
Yeah, figured. I have been wanting to get a new Android device for a while. The previous Nexus device that I had got lost somewhere in Australia, not by me. And I've decided that I wanted to go ahead and get one of the better phones. There are, because I could have gone for a 5X, but I've heard complaints about the 5X from a performance perspective, and I basically wanted this for a couple of reasons. I wanted to have a good understanding of what Android is like now. I like to try and keep up with what's happening, and also I wanted to have a device that was ready to try and test some of Google's podcast store thing that they have launching at some point. Because I have Apple devices to test what our shows look like there, and if we go into the Google store, I want to see what that's like there as well. So I decided that the time was right, and I went ahead and purchased a Nexus 6P. I have not really had enough time to play around with the device yet. I'm very impressed with everything that I have tried. One of two observations that I have. The Nexus 6P's hardware is great. Including the fingerprint sensor on the back. I actually think that is an ingenious design, and it's a real interesting place to put a fingerprint sensor. It feels like a very natural place to have it. My other observation is that material design on Android features a lot of the whimsy that I think is lost in iOS now. Come at me, haters!
Like a lot of the animations and shadows, that kind of stuff.
Animations, shadows, and just general design things that feel superfluous, but go to making a nice experience. I don't think we have a lot of that anymore in iOS. It's there in places, but overall, I think that material design is doing a better job of animations and things like that than iOS is right now.
Yeah, it's really nice, and I like what you said about the fingerprint reader. I have the little sibling of this, the Nexus 5X, because I like you, and it's helpful for me at work to have an Android device around. And for people like us who aren't going to necessarily switch to it, but kind of need to keep up with it, the Nexus phones are the obvious choice. And I really like the fingerprint reader on the back. I don't know about the 6P, but on the 5X, it's basically exactly where my finger would be anyways. And it's just really nice. And the 6P is definitely nicer built than the 5X. But if you're looking, for a stock Android experience, it's really I think probably the 6P is the best phone in the market for it.
And it does, the fingerprint reader does something that I wish the iPhone did. It unlocks the phone without you needing to turn the screen on.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Oh,
press your
nice.
finger on the reader and the phone unlocks, which feels, as soon as it happened, I was like, this is what it should be like. That feels better.
It's amazing how much faster it feels. It's like even the 5X, which is, it's not a super high-end phone. It feels like it unlocks so much faster than my 6S Plus because of you're just skipping that little step.
Yeah, the fingerprint reader itself, I don't think is faster, but the fact that you don't need to do that step makes it feel that way, and sometimes that's all it takes.
Exactly.
So I want to spend more time with it, and I'll have some more thoughts about this device that I'll share somewhere a little later on. But right now, it's here and it's doing stuff.
Now, what happens, Mike, if you end up liking Android, or at least the modern Android, a lot better than iOS?
There was a time where that was the case for me. I switched to Android a couple of years ago for like 6 months or something like that.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
I know I'm in a problem right now because I thought about it. I thought about like, what would it be like to maybe switch to Android again for a few months to really kind of understand it. But the problem is the tablet situation.
Yeah.
There are no really good Android tablets. Even Google's new one is suffering from a lack of tablet innovation in the software side. Like, you now I'm so used to split screen, like you can't do split screen apps in the current version of Android. So it would be difficult, let alone expensive, for me to make that switch now. But I won't rule anything out. I want to spend more time with it. Like at some point, maybe after I finish with this little bit of traveling I'm about to start doing, I might throw my SIM in the 6P for a bit and just see how it rolls.
Yeah, maybe if you use, online services instead of, local apps with no sync, the transition between an iPad Pro and a 6P would be actually possible. Slack, Twitter, email,
Yeah.
those are on both platforms.
It is getting easier and easier to
Yeah.
make those moves. It really is.
It's going to be a problem with Apple Notes, if you don't use Safari, so you don't have the Safari problem. I think it's more possible today than ever, with the exception for a few Apple apps, maybe.
But you can replace them.
You can replace them. I mean, instead of Apple Notes, you could use, what can you use? Evernote?
I guess I could use Evernote. There will be Android note-taking apps that we don't know.
Yeah.
But they will exist.
For sure. I'm just thinking about, having the same notes on your iPad Pro and the 6P.
Yeah, if I wanted the same, then I would move to something like Evernote again, or Simple Note. Simple Note exists on both
still
platforms.
around?
Yeah, still around.
Okay.
Still kicking, man. I don't know what it's doing,
Nice.
but it's still there.
Oh, me neither. Nice.
There might even be a weird app that will let me sync my notes. Like there are weird Android apps that I've used that let you sync contacts and calendars with iCloud. I don't want to know how it's doing it, but I've used them, so I'll dig around. But yeah, this will be a discussion for a later show, I think.
Before we move out of follow up, we have some. We need a new word for this. We have follow up. We have follow out. Follow in. This is follow up to a sponsor read. So I don't know what this is.
Well, this can be
Sponsor up.
Sponsor up. So
Follow money follows.
So-
this is regarding the PDF pen ads that we do for our friends at Smile. And we have asked each other numerous times without looking it up what Bates numbering is. And so we asked David Sparks, co-host of Mac Power Users and attorney at law. And David basically explained that Bates numbering is basically like a UUID for paper, to kind of use a term that we'll be familiar with. And so basically it's page numbering. So you start with a prefix. So in this example, the prefix would be relay. And it basically everything you produce gets a unique number. And so it basically generates an audit trail. So when someone else says, oh, you didn't give me that document, you could reply, yes, go look at relay-03462. And these numbers are generated automatically when you create files within this project. And it seems like a bunch of different software can do it. PDF Pen does it. That's what Bates numbering means. It is fancy. It is for business paperwork. And David Sparks set us straight. So there you go. Case solved.
I don't know this, and it would be funny if this was the case. Like, I feel like this may have been put into PDF Pen for David.
Maybe.
Maybe that's the story we'll never find out the answer to. All right, let's see if this sponsor read generates any follow-up. Today's episode is also brought to you by Braintree, code for easy online payments. If you're a mobile app developer, you should be checking out Braintree. They are the payment solution used by companies and apps that you use every day, like Uber, Airbnb, Hotel Tonight, Living Social, Munchery, and many, many more. Braintree has made the payment experiences in these apps seamless and magical, and you can now add a similar experience to your own app as well. With excellent customer service and simple integrations, Braintree gets you ready to receive payments quickly. Braintree has continuous support and also these fast payouts. This means that you're going to be able to be prepared as your company grows from your first dollar to your billionth. Braintree is also helping solve the problem of mobile cart abandonment by offering a best-in-class mobile checkout experience. They make payment experiences in some of your favorite apps seamless and magical. When you combine that with the mobile checkout experience, that basically means that people aren't going to your site or going into your app and leaving. You know, they put something in their cart and go away. Braintree, because like maybe it's a difficult experience, Braintree make this easy and they make it simple. They make it beautiful, and you can now add these experiences to your own apps as well. Braintree is a full-stack payment solution with support for all payment types your customers might be looking for, including PayPal, Apple Pay, Bitcoin, Venmo, cards, and more. It's with you across all platforms with superior fraud protection, fantastic customer service, and those very important fast payouts. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, head on over to BraintreePayments.com/connected. Thank you to Braintree for their support of this show.
So for topic 0 this week, I wanted to talk about the Mac Mini real quick. This sort of spurred on from an article by Brian over at Mac Mini Colo. It's basically saying that if you have a certain generation of Mac Mini, like mid-2010, 2011, 2012, that sort of era of machine, that it's actually really affordable to upgrade those computers now. So the current Mac Mini you can go buy today, it does not have a quad-core model at the top. These older ones did. And the lack of upgradability is an issue. You can't upgrade the RAM in the new ones. You can kind of do the drives, but only sort of, which is really frustrating to me. But, we talked about the Mac Mini a long time ago in context of, Federico maybe needing to replace his MacBook Air at some point. As we talked about a lot, you can't podcast currently on iOS, and so you're using a MacBook Air for that is seen better days. We'll leave it at that. Had you thought any more about replacing with a Mac Mini? Do you still think that's a good fit, or are you just holding on as long as you can?
You know the Death Cab for Cutie song, the line when it says "Love is watching someone die."
Oh my gosh.
That's my relationship with my MacBook Air. So
wow, that's a super sad song. So thanks for that.
Sorry,
so,
Steven.
I use I've got several Mac Minis. I have this outlined in my article. We have one that if you're listening live to us right now, you're listening through a Mac Mini that's hosted at Mac Mini Colo. We have one. I've got a personal one there as well for some backups and some server stuff that I play with. And then we have one at home that serves up iTunes library and a big file volume, and then it's hooked up to our television as well for the occasional stuff that we can't do through the Apple TV. The Mac Mini is just on HDMI number 2. And they're great machines, and all of mine are older. I don't have any of the current ones. I've got like 2011s and I think one 2012 machine in my little Mac Mini army, and they really are great. The one at home, I've got an SSD in, and you can't tell the machine's 5 years old. It really is pretty spectacular. And for me, it's an interesting commentary on like how good computers are now. Like that you can have a Mac Mini from 2011, which maybe you spent $800 on. It's not a Mac Pro, it's not an iMac, it's a Mac Mini. And if you bought it well spec'd, or if you upgrade it, it's still perfectly fine for what most people need out of their computer most of the time. And I wonder if this migration to RAM that's soldered on, like that, take the Retina MacBook Pro. You can't do anything in that machine. You can't do anything in a MacBook Air. It's all part of the logic board. And And even though the Air, I think the Air does have an SSD you can swap out. It's a custom part. It's hard to get. It's expensive. And I just wonder that if this means that Macs will last shorter amounts of time in the future because you can't upgrade, or if the computers we can buy today are so good that as long as you buy it well spec'd, it'll last just as long. And I know that I can go a lot longer between upgrading computers, and I have family members who are using computers that are older and older, and they're fine, and they just keep on running. And I think that's an interesting, parallel conversation to what we talk about with the iPad, that the iPad has been so good for so long that people just don't see the need to upgrade to new hardware. But I don't know, it's just a little interesting article that Brian wrote up about RAM prices and stuff, and it kind of kicked off this whole train of thought in my head.
So I don't follow Macs, the OS 10 in particular anymore. But I just wonder, and this is maybe going to sound controversial to a lot of people, but is the era of, taking a peek under the hood of a computer and upgrading components over? And I mean this in the sense that at least I and other friends and people that I know, I see people, they buy computers and most of them don't care, about, is this a computer that I'm going to be able to, upgrade the RAM or, change the SSD for something better. And in the same sense, that used to be a must, if you will, to know how a car worked, to know what an engine was like, to know what you were supposed to do if a car broke down. And I would argue that most young people who drive or buy cars today, when the car breaks down, they just call a number and they don't know how to fix it. I mean, personally, I don't even know how to change a tire. Like, if a tire breaks, I'm gonna call, the emergency number. And you could argue that I'm stupid and then, I should know better. But it's just, I don't want to know how this stuff works. I don't need to know how this mechanical stuff works with my car. I could make the same argument with a computer. So for people like Steven, it's going to be problematic when a Mac Mini can no longer be upgraded. But for most people, as long as you're like, I need a computer, I go to the store, I need a box that I need to connect to a monitor, or I need to buy a laptop. I don't care about, am I going to be able to change the RAM in the future? Just give me a computer. I don't care. And in this sense, computers are becoming more and more like smartphones and tablets. You just pick your configuration up front and you're good to go for the next few years.
Yeah, I think that is exactly what's happening. And I think while it bugs people like me, that overall, for the general computing public, that it's good that computers have become not only simpler, but also much more reliable. Things like SSDs are much more reliable than spinning hard drives. We've gotten rid of the optical drive. As Apple has stripped away moving parts, and as processors have gotten better, computers are more reliable and more current longer than ever. And I think that's good. I think that computers, like cars, should be something that we can depend on no matter what. And that, back in the day, if you wanted to own a car, you had to know how to fiddle with it right. That because in all likelihood, at some point you were going to be broken down, or at some point you're going to have to do something. And as cars have gotten more reliable, that's gone away. And while that does bother me, I think overall it's great. I really do.
So, just quickly on the Mac Mini, I have one of these in a closet, right? One of the 2011 ones, I think. It is a 2011 one, isn't it, that I have?
Like,
I think
literally in a closet?
Yeah, it was what I was using before I moved to a Mac Pro.
Okay.
And then onto the iMac. I have been thinking, and we will talk about this later, about turning that into a home server.
You should do that.
Yes.
I've been considering it. Plex being one of the things that I'm looking for.
Yeah. You could make your own Synology without actually having a Synology, in a way,
Yep.
Jason does this, and I think it's an excellent choice, especially because, of course, OS 10 gives you more freedom. There are some excellent apps to connect from iOS, like screens, file managers. You should do it, Mike. You should do it and go crazy. It's super fun.
Yeah, I'm planning on it. It's just, again, it's like another big task that I don't want to do right now, but I'm going to do it. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
You should. I mean, our TV Mac Mini, like I said, doubles as a file server, and I've got some scripting running on it all the time, and it's nice to have something that's always available, especially if you have a lot of stuff that relies on things like Dropbox. You know that's always synced to one central place. You can set your photos. I mean, the possibilities are endless. So it is nice. The Mac Mini is definitely, that's a role that it fits for a lot of people, and Apple's even done that. For several years now, they've offered a server configuration. Sometimes it just means they put OS 10 server on it. Sometimes it means it has a second hard drive and more RAM. But whatever it is, they have pitched the Mac Mini to small businesses as a server product. And there's a bunch of people who use them that way because they're silent and there's no impact on your electrical bill to have it on 24/7. And it's, like I said, it's become a machine that can last longer and longer as they've gotten more powerful. So I think you should do it.
I'll let you know how it goes along or ask you to tell me what to do. So
I could just come over and do it.
yeah, you should do that.
Business trip. So we're going to talk a little bit about Siri this week, and this is sort of jumping off a rumor that's been floating around that Mac OS 10 at 10.12, which, God, the naming's out of control.
When me and Jason started talking about this on Upgrade, I did that exact same thing. I read 10.12 and was like, oh, really?
They got to change it.
So I do like, just as a quick, off topic, I do like a theory that I've seen from Graham, from my friend at Maxorix. He says, so this year they're gonna do OS 10, 10.12 and iOS 10, and next year they could do iOS 11 and macOS 11.
Yeah, time together.
Yeah.
It's another reason to like there are many things that they could do, right? Like this could be the time when they change it to Mac OS because they have Watch OS and TV OS.
Yeah.
But that one also makes sense, right? There are a bunch of little things now which make sense, and I think it's just based upon us all wanting that to change.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine the marketing campaign next year. Both iOS and macOS go to 11.
Turn it to 11. Yeah.
Turn it up to 11.
Mm-hmm.
That could be nice. We'll see. Anyway,
Craig Federico is not going to let that joke go by unmade. like he can't do it. It's the most dad joke of all.
He'll probably make it this year about next year, and then make it 2 times next year.
Yeah. So I don't even know where we were. So anyway, Siri coming to the Mac, rumored to be maybe even a tentpole feature, and another in the long list of things that started on iOS and the Mac just sort of gets later, which is interesting topic in and of to itself. But I kind of wanted to bypass that a little bit and talk about Siri itself. And Ed Cormany is a guy I follow on Twitter. He does a couple of podcasts, and he wrote this thing that I thought was really interesting about Siri fragmentation. I thought it was an interesting way to start the conversation. So in this post, he's talking about using the Apple TV to watch, I believe it was a tennis match, and he's asking Siri questions as he's watching. So he wants to know like the weather of where this match is, and then he wants to see the serve speeds. They're reported in kilometers per hour on the broadcast, but he's American and wants to know what it is in miles per hour. And he asks Siri on the Apple TV, and Siri can't do the unit conversion. Now, of course, Siri can do that unit conversion on iOS. And it seems like Apple decided that, unit conversion is not something we want people to do on the Apple TV, or it'll never be an issue, and it's never going to come up, so let's just remove it. And I just found that as an interesting jumping off point that, what could Siri do on the Mac? And what I'm afraid Apple would do is basically just port iOS Siri, right? That it does everything that iOS Siri does and nothing else. While in reality, I think that Siri on OS 10 is an opportunity to expand what Siri can do and let Siri do things new and specifically for the Mac that don't make sense on iOS. And I think that would be great. I mean, I do think there should be some sort of base layer. I think Siri should be able to unit conversion wherever Siri is. Like, that's just silly that it can't do that on the TV. But I think it would be nice to see Siri, if it comes to the Mac, have some additional features.
I think there should kind of be two layers of Siri from a functionality perspective. So there should be asking Siri a question, so asking Siri for information. That layer should be the same everywhere. And then on top of that, you have asking Siri to perform actions, and then that should be platform specific.
Yeah, that's a good
Right.
point. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to ask Siri to find the most recent episode of Community on your iPhone. Well, it does make a lot more sense on the Apple TV.
Exactly. So I think what it seems like at the moment Apple are doing is building a new instance of Siri on each device. Because Siri on the Apple TV cannot currently even perform functions that it should be able to that an iPhone can do, like playing a song from anywhere on the device. Now, if they're using the same Siri layer, why should it not be able to do that, right? So like it would appear to me that it seems like they're kind of building it over and over again for whatever reason you need to do something like that. So I think it would be really nice if they could just be like, right, this is what Siri can do everywhere. We've got that locked down. This is asking questions, asking information, asking news, and they need to build the appropriate UIs on each platform to deal with that. And then they have the specific things. So like asking on iOS for it to launch a specific application, asking it on the Mac to turn on brightness or something, like there should be these then functions that exist on each specific platform that are relatable to the platforms that they're on.
I think the main point right now is that it's really time for Apple to open up third-party integrations to, with Siri. We're seeing this, in other competing products. The Amazon Echo as probably the best or the richest assistant with third-party service and app integrations. Just today, SoundHound, the Shazam-like service, opened up to the public the latest Hound assistant, which has been in beta for Android, I think, for almost 7-8 months, maybe. Now it's available on iOS, and they do some really impressive natural language processing.
Yeah.
So it supports a lot more conjunctions, between sentences. You can be a lot more specific when you ask Hound some questions, and they do some integration with third-party companies. There's a Uber integration. I believe there's something else also for maybe music. I don't know. It's probably richer on Android.
You may remember Hound from that video where people were asking what is a 1% interest rate on a mortgage from a house bought in Toronto. Would you remember that?
It was super
just
complex
those
query.
crazy complex questions, and it was just giving the answers. That was Hound.
Yeah, and I'm playing around with it, and the more I use the Amazon Echo, the more I look at Google Now. It's not an assistant; it just presents you with the visual cards. But the idea is the same: to integrate with third-party apps and services to show you and to show you information from those apps in a more intelligent way, in a dashboard, that kind of presentation, and to allow you to speak commands for third-party apps. So I think it's really time for Apple to open up the Siri API. It's been 5 years since we first had Siri on the iPhone 4S, and I guess it's starting to feel a little old. It's nice. You can ask Siri questions, and it's excellent for, Apple Music, messages, timers, that kind of native iOS stuff. But it's more and more feeling like one of those things that Apple does just for themselves, and other companies are doing much, much more. And there's a huge undertaking here to come up with an API to structure, those integrations in a way that makes sense for developers and for users. Just think about it. How you're gonna ask Siri to create a new task? You cannot say create a new task because it can get confusing, with reminders and say OmniFocus on the same device. So you have to use OmniFocus as a keyword to say, okay, Siri, create a new task in OmniFocus. That makes sense, but then you have to allow developers to come up with a dictionary of keywords and commands, and you have to let developers, localize those commands in multiple languages. It's a huge challenge, but I believe that, in order to take Siri to the next level, it has to happen, and it's not just about launching apps, right? Because a lot of people, when they think about the Siri API on iOS, they imagine this kind of glorified URL scheme launcher where you just ask Siri to do stuff and Siri takes you to the app to perform that activity. But it's not like that. When you're thinking about the Siri API, what you really want is visual feedback in Siri also. When you create a reminder in Siri, it doesn't take you to the Reminders app. It shows you a mini Reminders interface in the Siri UI. And you want the same to be true for third-party integrations. So you want, for example, to have a to-do or OmniFocus UI right inside Siri, and you want the task that you create via Siri in OmniFocus to be shown to you in the Siri interface. So you also have to enable developers to perform all kinds of updates in the background when they receive new information from Siri. So at a technical level, it's a very, very huge change for developers. But it's one of those things that it's super tricky to do, but it feels right. And maybe iOS 10 finally will be, that kind of update to bring better Siri intelligence. And I can make other two arguments to conclude. It would be fantastic for accessibility, to be able to speak to apps and to, create content or to access content from apps from an accessibility perspective. And it would be just a boon for productivity and efficiency on the Apple Watch. To be able to interact with any apps via voice on the Apple Watch would be just, that's what it needs to happen.
Yeah, whether they're on the watch or not.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of, I think it was iOS 4 with multitasking, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
When they introduced multitasking originally, they were like, there are 5 things you can do. Right.
Yes.
Whatever those things were, I don't remember. But like audio playback, there's 5 things you can do in the background. I think it would be interesting to see something like that, where Apple are like, there are these X amount of things that as a developer you can plug into with Siri, and they are to do these things. Maybe it's like create a new entry of some description. Or,
yeah, sure.
It's like I'm thinking of like, say it was a task management thing. You could say, you can create a task with this API, blah 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 blah. And then what I would really love to see then, which I don't think Apple would ever do, for there to be a Siri menu and I choose the app that does each thing. So, for example, I would say, if I just say create a task, remember to get the milk out of the fridge or whatever, that it would automatically go in OmniFocus because that's the application that I have assigned the Siri action create a task.
Sure.
That's what I would love it to do, but I don't see that.
You want the ability to set default apps for specific tasks, and that's also another of those long-standing feature requests. But I could also argue that if you look back at iOS 9 last year, and even iOS 8 with handoff, the way that Apple likes to play the long game. In some cases, they come up with a feature that eventually is going to be used for a whole other engine or functionality of iOS. And I could say that the NS User Activity API, the API that lets developers specify points of interest in their apps, it was used for handoff in iOS 8. So you could take, for example, a view in Reminders and open it from an iPhone to the iPad. Or in iOS 9, the same API was used to index points of interest in an app. So you could search for like steps in the Spotlight page, and it takes you to the steps view of the Health app. Or you can search for an article, and it takes you to that article in your Read Later application of choice. The same API could be used to communicate with Siri, this year with iOS 10. You could, because Siri and because iOS knows those points of interest from apps that supports the API, you could access information from those points of interest. So you could say, "What's my latest article in Instapaper?" And it gives you, here's the article. Do you wanna read it, or do you wanna share it? It's fun to consider the existing APIs and the way that they could be updated to take advantage of Siri. And for me, this realization of it's really time to have a more intelligent Siri, it was solidified by the Amazon Echo, because it's really, you can, of course, you can integrate with third-party services, but you can also install skills. So skills on the Echo are like special features from other services. Like there's a skill to match lyrics from songs to the title of the song. And there's hundreds of skills that you can install, and they make the Echo a lot more, a lot smarter than other assistants. And it really feels like Apple is, falling behind in this regard.
Yeah, I mean, you look at these other systems that are much more integrated, right? Like even on Android with the Google Now stuff, it's come such a long way, and they're iterating so quickly on it. Siri feels so much slower, and it's one of those things that it feels like they lock it into these iOS releases and aren't introducing new things throughout the year. And so much with what Google does, it's just little tweaks over time, and it's a very different approach to these releases. But I think something like Siri I don't think it is. I think it could be so central to how iOS works and operates. And right now it just feels still so many years on, it just feels like it's bolted on. And yeah, it's nice when it works, but it's sort of strange a lot of the time. And you can do so much without it that it really just feels like this layer on top of iOS as opposed to this like integrated thing that runs throughout it.
Yeah. Now just imagine if they do a Siri Beats speaker, that it's like an Amazon Echo, but for, Apple Music, Siri, and it listens to you around the house. Now, would Apple ever do that? Or is that too creepy for Apple to do?
I don't think they're going to make an Echo competitor.
Yeah. But it would be, it would be great. Just
because you
that.
know what they want? I know it doesn't work, but they want people just talking into their watches.
Probably.
Because the watch is on you.
But music, it's not, when you want to listen to music on a speaker.
I don't think they're going to make it for that. But I mean, I think it's worth remembering that the Echo's ability to play music is just like a afterthought of the fact that it's a speaker. I don't think it was ever built to play music. It was built for you to talk to it.
Probably. Yeah, I guess. It was built to listen to you, really.
Yeah. I mean, and it plays music because it's a speaker.
It's like they're trying to sweeten the deal, make it less creepy by giving you music.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. Because Amazon has a music thing, but they don't really do a lot with their music thing.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I guess it's just fun to imagine. I mean, because I want Apple to be as convenient. Sometimes I want Apple to be creepy as Google and Amazon. Allow me the use of the word creepy in the sense that they know a lot about me and they can be more intelligent about, these smart features. But I know that it's not in Apple's DNA or whatever to do that kind of stuff. I just wish sometimes it was like, it's okay, Apple. I want you to know this stuff about me.
Let me provide this information, please.
I'm willingly giving up my information. Please do something with it and be useful.
Like here is a great example, and you've mentioned this before, Federico. I was in Google Now while setting up my the Nexus 6P, and it recognized that for me to get home, it would take X amount of time by public transport. Because I always search in Google Maps via public transport. The next day, I had a time to leave notification because of traffic. I don't even have a car. And Apple's system doesn't know I use public transport because it doesn't let me tell it. And because it's not watching, it just tells me how to get to places by car. It's like I think this shows a massive difference in the systems. It's like, I don't have a car. I'm never in a car. Google knows that. Apple doesn't. Google knows that because they peek at me. But that's useful to me because then I'm not getting frustrated and looking around different views to get that information.
Yeah. I agree. So get this. Google figured out, because I keep the Google app installed on my iPhone. Google figured out that I usually go to the mall, which is the mall like 5 minutes away where the Apple Store also is. And the other day, it popped up a card on Google Now, and it was like, "Do you want me to show you this card always because you frequently go to this place?" I'm like, "Yes, please. Show me traffic because I want to know." Like, I know that some people are like, "Oh my God, Google knows my address," and I used to be one of those people, and I think I made very public amends to what I used to believe, but I feel like there's a it's a positive aspect to grow up and change your opinion, because I now understand that the convenience of giving up my habits, yes, of course, big deal. Google knows that I go to the mall. Well, okay. Could I, let's play out the apocalyptic scenario. The government hacks into Google server and they find out that I go to the mall. Personally, I don't care, because the sheer utility that I get from that traffic card in the Google app, that it tells me, well, maybe it's not the best time to go to the mall at 6 p.m. Maybe you should go at 7:30 because there's less traffic. That's far better for me than the peace of mind of knowing, yes, I'm totally secure. The government doesn't know that I go to the mall. I mean, at one point you just start feeling paranoid about, the government or hackers knowing that you go to the mall, that you go someplace. I do understand why people are turned off by that. I used to be one of those people. Again, I just want to stress this very clearly. I used to be of the belief that no company should ever know my habits or what I do or my taste. But at some point, I just want to save time. And Google Now, Amazon Echo, they do that kind of stuff. They're either Siri, or we could talk about the proactive page on iOS 9. They do stuff that those features don't offer me. So I understand people's position that my privacy is important and I don't want to use Google and Amazon. And I don't understand people who take it to the extreme, like, I'm switching to DuckDuckGo because the results aren't as good as Google, but man, they do care about privacy. And I don't understand people who are like, I'm never going to shop on Amazon again because they're creepy and they do, these features. But okay. But also, I feel like those people should also understand the opposite position of folks like us, saying, well, I get it. I'm giving up a little of my information, but at the end of the day, this stuff is useful.
I'm sure long-time listeners will remember the many shouting matches that me and you had about this exact thing, right?
Isn't it much better that
yes,
I changed my
that's what
opinion?
I was trying to tell you at the time.
I strongly believe that changing an opinion is much, much better than holding that opinion as true, even if it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Saying that you're not wrong, but just growing up. I don't think I was wrong. I'm changing. That's better. I'm like a butterfly.
You are just like a butterfly. All right, is that it on Siri?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Let me take a break. This week's episode is brought to you by pCalc. pCalc is a practically omnipresent scientific calculator app that has been actively developed for 23 years. You can get pCalc on your iPhone, your iPad, your Mac, your Apple Watch, and even your Apple TV. pCalc is always there supporting the latest technologies like split screen on iPad, which makes it perfect for the iPad Pro, so you can be doing your calculations alongside other apps. I do this all the time. I was doing it today, actually. I had a spreadsheet open and I was putting in some entries, and I had pCalc on the other side to do some calculations for me. And on the Apple TV, pCalc even features gamepad support. In case that's the thing that you want to do, you could do that. One of pCalc's best features on iOS is that you can create your own completely custom calculator layouts and assign functions and specific unit conversions to dedicated buttons. So, for example, this is how I have a very simple layout, because you can remove the buttons you don't need, and I made the buttons that I do need bigger, so it's easier for me to use and see. And then I added 2 custom functions into my pCalc layout. I have one that will take the current answer and convert it from dollars to pounds. So if I'm working out something like how much I'm paying myself, I can work out what it is. And then I have one that subtracts 30% from the current total to help me put money aside for my taxes. I think you're starting to get a picture of what I do with pCalc. Right? I use it to work out my finances. It really is fantastic. It has great themes as well. I use a really space age looking theme, but there are more classic designed, kind of slightly skeuomorphic designs based on some real life calculators as well, if that's the type of thing that you're looking for. pCalc has a place on my home screen. It is the best calculator that I've ever used, and I mean that. I really do love it. There is a calculator available in Control Center, but it's not the one that I use. I use PCalc.
Can I just real quick? I love PCalc, like I really do. I love James Thompson. He's a genius. But I want to say, on the iPad, I mean, I generally love the guy. But on the iPad, the app is excellent. There's no calculator on the iPad, which is a joke. But thankfully, there's PCalc, and it supports split view and slide over. So when I was doing my taxes on my iPad a couple of months ago, I was so much faster than the previous years when I used to keep a calculator on my phone next to my computer or next to my iPad to do calculations when I was doing taxes. Now I was able to like work in Excel on one side and PCalc on the other, and then could switch between Excel and Safari. PCalc was always there on the right side of the screen. It was glorious. I saved so much time with multitasking and PCalc on the iPad, and this is really not from the sponsor read. It's just my true experience from a couple of months ago. I really, really love PCalc. So, yeah, there you go.
It's true. It's it's an absolutely fantastic app. You can find out more about PCalc by going to pcalc.com/relay. That's pcalc.com/relay. Thank you so much to PCalc and the great developer, Mr. James Thompson, for supporting Connected and Relay FM. I've shared meals and drinks with James. He is one of my very favorite people. All right, so I wanted to bring up a blog post from the wonderful developer and iOS miner. Like he digs into iOS and finds things. Mr. Steve Troughton-Smith. I can't even think of a way to like introduce him correctly because he
iOS madman.
There you go.
He's probably iOS own Leonardo da Vinci.
He's like the Willy Wonka of iOS. I'll just keep going. He wrote a great post called the WWDC Wishlist, where he digs into some real specific things that he would like to be changed in Apple's many platforms, and also some big picture stuff, like, for example, a unified app platform for iOS and OS X, which is a really interesting thing. I urge you to go and read the post. We'll put a link in our show notes. But we each picked a few of the specific things that interest us, and we want to talk about them. And Stephen, I believe you wanted to start.
Yeah, so leading up to WWDC, we're going to see a lot of this stuff. But what I like about this particular list is that it's very nerdy. And the one that jumped out at me is the command key on the software iPad keyboard. So if you have the smart keyboard or, of course, regular Bluetooth keyboard, you have a command key. And keyboard shortcut support in iOS is really better than ever. And a lot of developers are adding it. But it seems silly to me that that's locked away for people who just have a hardware keyboard. And I understand that it may be confusing to people. Maybe it's a toggle somewhere to turn it on or off on the software keyboard. But I think that keyboard shortcuts are, while they are a remnant from a time past of personal computing, I think they still have a place in our touchscreen iOS world. But I believe that one of us disagrees with me.
I strongly disagree with the idea of having shortcuts come to the software keyboard, because it kind of defeats the whole point of the separation between physical input with the external keyboard and the touch input with the software one. I feel like when I'm using the software keyboard, the commands that are exposed to shortcuts for hardware keyboards, they're built into an app's interface. When I'm using the software keyboard, I don't need to have a shortcut to create a new document, because there's a plus button right there that I can just touch. I feel like adding a command key to the software keyboard to replicate shortcuts that are otherwise available directly on screen would just add complexity to the keyboard that is not necessary.
I would make the argument that this should be an iPad Pro feature.
And not the others.
And not the others.
They already have another keyboard. And,
Keyboard's bigger, right?
Yes.
And also the smart keyboard is, what I have noticed clearly, encouraging developers to put more keyboard shortcuts in their apps.
Yep. And Federico, I disagree with basically your whole thing, because
I disagree with everything you are.
Disagree with all your life decisions. No. I get what you're saying, that keyboard shortcuts can add some sort of level of complexity that you may not want. But I think that is true if you tie things only to keyboard shortcuts, right? Like there's some apps that I use on the Mac that the menu system is so ridiculous that it's just easier to know the keyboard shortcuts that I need to use, or something like Logic that's very keyboard driven. That's one thing, but I think that there is room for developers to use keyboard shortcuts to mimic or to have things that the on-screen buttons and UI expose, but to have them available for people who want to use them on the keyboard, not forcing a decision, but saying, hey, you know what, you can reach up and tap that button, or if you're already on the software keyboard and it's faster and you prefer it that way, go hit the command key. And that's the way it works on the Mac, right? It's the way it works on desktop computers. And I think that it can make sense on iOS. I agree with you. I don't want developers to be like stashing things behind keyboard shortcuts and not having them in the UI and adding complexity that way. But I don't think that just having them as a parallel option necessarily adds complexity to an app.
Yeah, I disagree. But what did they say? Agree to disagree.
Okay.
Myke, take us to the next point.
No, I'm not done. Because I really feel that it shouldn't be on all iPads, but I do think it should be on the iPad Pro. It feels like a pro feature. It would fit on the keyboard. And if you are using the physical keyboard so much as I am, when you use the software keyboard, I would like them to be there. I understand why you're coming from where you're coming from, Federico, and I do get it, because it's not like with a keyboard. The reason keyboard shortcuts exist is because your hands are on the keyboard. On the software keyboard, your hands are on the screen that already has the button, right? So I get that, but I'm starting to see now more and more keyboard shortcuts that activate things that would take multiple taps, or that are not immediately on screen, because people are baking in more and more complex things. So I think it might be nice in some areas, but I see where you're both coming from with your arguments.
Okay, so let me counter with this.
We lose an hour to this.
Having this discussion on shortcuts for the software keyboard feels to me like Mac people come into iOS and be like, well, we want the command key on the software keyboard. The same argument could be made for iOS people going to the Mac and saying, well, I want to touch the screen. And whenever you bring that up, Mac folks tell you, well, Mac is not made for touching the screen because the interface is not made for that. That's iOS. And to me, it feels like a clear line in the sand. On the Mac, you have shortcuts. Well, on physical keyboards, for the iPad, you have shortcuts because it makes sense there. But when you're touching the screen, you're on iOS, you interact with the interface, you don't touch the screen on the Mac. It's really a similar argument, the way that I look at it. I see why it would be nice, right? I understand why it would be nice. I just feel like it would do more bad than good to the iPad. But we'll see, right? I mean, there's June is coming up.
All right, this one is probably going to confuse many people. One of the things on Steve's list that I like is system-level drawing and markup.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
The whole thing I was campaigning against with the Apple Pencil. So I think that this is a fantastic idea for a feature, for me to be able, at any point, to be able to draw on the screen and leave lines and show things. But my argument, which me and Gray were talking about this on an episode of Cortex, this should definitely be there, but it should be invoked by some kind of button or shortcut of some description. Not a keyboard shortcut, of course, because we shouldn't have those, right, Federico? But there could be a button, or Gray came up with the idea, which I like, is a button you hit in Control Center, which turns the UI to only react to drawing with the pencil. Like, you can't move the UI at that point.
I just feel like it would be, maybe it could be even simpler than that. Apple could just make an API to implement a generic drawing view. Just like there's a UI text field.
That's what I mean, like you hit a button in an app, which lets you draw on the app.
Yeah, exactly. There's no need for a control center shortcut to enable that. Like any app could just have a little box where it's like, you want to draw here? Okay, bring this up and you can only draw.
Yeah, but then you've got a Google app, right? And then they won't put it in for a year, which might be nice. Yeah, that's the reason that I would suggest putting it in the OS. Like
to force it. Oh, okay.
Uh,
To force it upon developers that might not necessarily put it in on their own.
I don't know. I mean, you could even say that Apple could force apps to support multitasking right now if they add, if they support the iPad Pro full resolution but not multitasking. I believe there's a toggle. I mean, Stephen Troughton-Smith knows this stuff. You can force apps to adopt split view even if they don't officially support split view. I guess you could also force to support this stuff. I don't know. I struggle to imagine Apple making a toggle in Control Center and be like, well, screw you. Now you support the Apple Pencil the way that we envisioned. But
I think they should be like that sometimes with some things.
Yeah, I know. It makes a lot of sense to save developers the time to, recreate the drawing engine and feature of the Notes app. The whole OpenGL engine, it's super smooth. The basic tools, they could benefit a lot of apps. Like, just imagine if, for example, it was a keyboard feature, like on the iPad Pro, or you could have. I'm serious here.
No, I know. It's just, would you make that a shortcut key or?
No. Like, imagine if you would make drawings like. A default way of communicating with people, the same way that you can choose between text and emoji. Imagine if you could have a drawing mode to send a sketch to anyone all the time, right? It's really similar to the way that you can send sketches on the Apple Watch, only that's terrible, and with the pencil it would actually be nice,
Yeah. All right, Federico, why don't you move on with our next point?
So this is also something that I've been thinking about for my iOS 10 wish list, drag and drop between apps. I assume in multitasking, it's what we're looking for. I believe it would be super tricky to get it right, but it also, again, like Siri, it feels like the right thing to do to enable users to drag and drop content between apps. So I've been thinking about this really deeply because I'm in the process of, again, putting together my annual wishes. The problem that I see is coming up with a solution that doesn't cause conflicts with the copy and paste menu, which is now copy, paste, define, and share menu is the full name, I guess. Having that menu and having drag and drop can be tricky because the moment that you're selecting text, so let's just say you want to select some text and drop it into a document. Easy enough on the Mac, you just select text and you drop it into the document next to it. On iOS, you would have the text selection controls, the copy and paste menu above that, and then you would be able to drag it and drop it into another app. It could cause some confusion to have all those things going on at once, copy and paste menu, selection, and drag and drop. So my idea is the copy and paste menu stay mostly the same, in terms of functionality. The copy and paste menu always appears in a way that doesn't obstruct the content that you're selecting. So that would stay the same. But I imagine you could keep pressing on a selection, whether it's document or whether it's text or an image, and you would enter a special dragging mode. So this would take like half a second maybe. And then with that special mode, you would be able to drop it into another app. It's also a question of why would you want to drag and drop? So I'm going to the very basic level here. Why do we want to be able to drag and drop? So I believe what I would want to see is a way to save time and to use the clipboard less. So the only way right now, if you have two applications up front on screen, the only way to exchange data between them is to either use the copy and paste menu or to use extensions from those apps while those apps apps are in the foreground, which is super a super hacky way to exchange information. Often when you use an extension for an app that is already in the foreground, you need to close and reopen the app for the extension to show you the new data. And I would love to have a way to move information from one app to the other. So that's the basic requirement. Actual examples would be I'm sending a new tweet and I want to attach a link or an image from Safari. Well, I should just be able to drag and drop it from Safari to the tweet, box, whatever it's called. Or I'm working on a document. So I have pages on one side and a collection of images on the other side. I shouldn't have to copy one image after the other and paste it. I shouldn't have to go through the document provider to, pick one image at a time. I should just be able to select those 5 images, use my finger and drop them into the document. It's one of those features that on the surface, it feels like, well, it's Apple taking features from OS X and bringing them to the iPad. But if you think about it, drag and drop makes perfect sense for multi-touch. For a big screen, you use your fingers, you directly touch an object and you place it from, you put it from one place into another. And so I've heard from a very second-hand rumor type of thing that a system framework like this is in the works. It has to be, right? It's so obvious. And I heard this when maybe last month I covered on Mac Stories this third-party framework to bring drag and drop to split view on iOS 9. I think it was called Dragon Drop. It was a clever joke. And I've heard that Apple is considering a system framework to let developers do this stuff natively. And it makes total sense to me, just like a Siri API does. The implementation could be tricky, but I feel like it's time to stop using the clipboard, extensions, or document pickers to move information and files slowly from one place to another.
Core Dragon,
yeah.
Drag and drop is an application.
Is an app for the Mac, right? Drag and drop. Yeah, Core Dragon, yeah.
I tell you what, one of the things I would really like from this is when I'm copying text from one window, like one app to another, which I do quite a lot. I would like to. I think drag and drop would be nicer than selecting it, tapping copy, going over here, tapping and holding, and then pressing paste. Right. I think it'd just be like selecting it and holding it and then just dragging it over. I would like that. That would be nice. I would say, whilst I don't think that this is going to happen for a while, a 3D touch action would really help with drag and drop.
You think so?
Well, it's like if you force press on something and hold, you get the ability to just move it without ever needing to invoke any kind of buttons. It might be tricky to do, but I think it might be nice. It would be a thing you could do with it.
Yeah, maybe. The main problem is I don't know if 3D Touch is coming to the iPad Pro.
That's what I mean. I don't think it. I think it will one day. I think we're a long way away
yeah.
from it happening.
Yeah, I agree. It makes total sense. Just, we'll see. What do we have next?
Up next, there's a section about UIKit apps coming to the Watch.
Oh,
so, WatchKit, even in WatchOS 2.0, is still pretty weak sauce compared to full UIKit, which is used, of course, to build apps for iPhone and the iPad. And I agree with him that he thinks that if the Watch is going to succeed as an app platform, that they need to bring UIKit to it. I'm not convinced the Watch needs to be a successful app platform, but that's my hang up. But he does go on to say that he's not convinced that the first generation hardware could drive this sort of thing. And Dan Morin had a piece on 6 Colors about the speed of the Apple Watch being like the big killer in his mind of something that promises to be faster, but it's not actually faster. And that would obviously, I think, would be worse, if you're running UIKit. But if they can rev the hardware and make that system on a chip faster, then maybe it opens up some more interesting, opportunities for apps to be more responsive. And I don't think this would fix the data transfer rate issue that seems to be a problem as well. But if it helps, with things like launch time and just overall responsiveness, then I think that would be a good thing.
Like when you hit a button and it recognizes the button's been pressed.
Oh my God.
Do anything.
Yes.
Confirm. Okay, the button's been pressed.
Last week,
No.
I was using a watch app and I pressed the button like 3 times, and it shows you the visual feedback, right? When the button is depressed, it shows you, and it did nothing. I was like,
nothing.
Screw it, whatever. I'm just gonna pick up my iPhone.
Oh, Apple Watch, you make me so sad.
Yeah.
All right, last one. All system iOS apps should support split screen. Like, I can't even believe this is a thing.
Yes.
It's like we're complaining about Google, right?
Yeah.
But there are Apple apps that aren't split screen. Like the apps, like any store, anything that has a store.
Why is that?
Not. I have no idea. Web objects, probably.
I've seen people put up that excuse, but why is web objects has to do with it?
I have no idea. I'm just running the meme. Like, I don't know.
So you're just repeating what you heard.
Yeah. I do that a lot, actually. That's my job, I think.
Okay. There's an iPhone version of the App Store, the iTunes Store. So there's a way to have smaller layouts of those stores. I've seen the security argument come up.
What?
I have no idea. Why wouldn't you be able to use a store in multitasking?
It's the 3/4 view, man. That 3/4 view is super unsafe. I don't know, man. FBI, probably.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. I don't... Maybe it's, just resource constrained. For some reason, those teams couldn't come up with a way to show you the apps are in multitasking. It just doesn't make any sense.
And it is weird, like the settings app as well. It's like, again, an iOS version exists. It's very peculiar.
Yeah. This comes up a lot with Apple Music for me. When I'm listening to music and I just want to be able to control playback next to what I'm doing, maybe I'm listening to a new album, or I'm browsing the new releases, and I don't understand why it doesn't support multitasking. Have you guys, while we're on the topic, just one last question, have you guys thought about using 3 apps at the same time on an iPad Pro?
Quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I admit I haven't wanted to say it because I feel greedy. But yeah, I have very frequently wanted to have the ability to have 3 apps. Well, because we've only just got 2, right?
So you feel like you're always asking for more.
Yeah, and then when they put 3, I want 4. Give me a quarter of each screen. So I haven't said it, but yes, I very frequently want 3 apps. But then again, I know when I get 3, I will want 4. There will be a reason. I want 4 apps now.
It's weird I can do that on my Mac.
It's too bad all the apps suck and nobody's bothering to develop them anymore.
That's not untrue. Moving on.
It's like you can put all the apps you want side by side, but there's no new ones.
Just Chrome windows all the way down.
Yep.
So what's next?
That's it. That's what I picked.
That's our list. I guess we're saving iOS 10 and OS 10 10.12 wishes for a proper episode. But it was too fun to look at this article by Steven, because he raised really some excellent points. I'm still thinking about the shortcut key on the iPad keyboard. I don't know. Maybe you guys have a point. Maybe I'm just...
You remember how you changed your opinion about Google?
Yeah. Maybe this is one of those
again
things.
with the shortcut key.
It's too soon, Mike. It's too soon. I'm like, what did they say? Saint Thomas. I need to touch it before I believe it. That's like a Christian thing, I believe. Why do am I thinking of that?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, Steven, come on. You're that kind of person. You know this stuff.
Fine line here, buddy.
A fun way to close the show. Yeah, he didn't believe that Jesus was alive, so he had to touch him.
It's Saint Thomas.
And he ate some fish in front of him.
And you won't believe what happened next.
it touched him.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to try this iPad keyboard. I'm not saying that I'm a saint, but I'm, just a way of life. Try before you buy, if you will.
Please end this, Mike.
If you'd like to find our show notes, head on over to relay.fm/connected/80. If you want to find Federico online, he is at Viticci, VITICCI on Twitter, and he writes over at macstories.net. Stephen is at ISMH, and he writes at 512pixels.net, and I am at iMyke, IMYKE. Thanks again to our sponsors this week, Peacock and Braintree. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next time. Until then, say goodbye, guys.
Arrivederci.
Adios.